things better or worse the second time around? Can we really do anything more than once?
Go balls! We are doing triangle congruence
Good job.
postules, whatever that is. Page number 59. And go balls and roll tide!
You don't even
They
like
just ruined the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's
It's alright, alright.
You have to do
I
that.
need your full attention. Y'all with me? Okay, listen. In proofs. Okay? In proofs.
And proofs.
In the column of reasons, you have things called definitions of, which would mean me simply saying, oh, it's the definition of this parallel lines or of congruent triangles. You have definitions, you have postulates, you have theorems, you have corollaries. So you have definitions, postulates, theorems, corollaries. Always have to think about it. Then you have the word given. Okay. With proofs, remember I told you I'm going to try to teach it to you so that if you are bad at the proofs, you can still recognize the patterns and be good at them. Does that make sense? My goal is that you actually understand it and are good at it, but I have a safety net built in that if you don't understand it, hopefully you still pay attention and will catch the patterns. These words are just fancy terms for the things we're going to use, okay? Don't get caught up in, is it a theorem, is it a postulate, is it a corollary? Please don't get caught up in that, because that's not what really matters. What matters is the words before it. Like, for instance, angle, side, angle, congruence, postulate. I don't care if you accidentally call it a theorem or a corollary. What I care is, did you say angle, side, angle? You see what I mean? So we're going to start learning a couple of things that are falling into these categories, and you just need to maintain the meat of it, like the important part of it, which would be, in this case, these 5 shortcuts right here, okay? So go into the sheet that you just got. Actually, let me go right back to this, right here. What did we just cover? You take a small triangle and you dilate it by a scale factor of 2 or 4, and it becomes a bigger triangle, and the 2 triangles are then called similar. Remember? And remember what I wrote on the board over there, and I said similar figures are the result of a dilation. It either got bigger or it got smaller, and they are proportional, right? Similar figures is the harder lesson, and we are done with it. Now, it'll still come up, but we're done with it. We are learning today, what if I have a triangle, we're sticking to triangles, and I have an exact carbon copy of it? Then they are not similar, they are called congruent. We're learning today the 5 shortcuts to prove a triangle is congruent to another triangle without having to check every single detail. Okay? So I think you're going to find this easier because now there's no scale factor. Because they're the same. They're the same length. Does that make sense? Alright, so there's the difference between the 2. We've covered similar. We had 3 shortcuts. Today we're covering congruent. And we have how many shortcuts? 5. They're on your paper. Alright, we're going to learn it, then we're going to practice it, and then you have a coloring assignment. Okay? Yay! Alright. Oh, okay. Alright, look at this. At the top of your paper, it would be helpful if you have a highlighter. So if you have a highlighter, Please get one. If not, take one of mine. Doesn't matter what color.
What's the square root of 2?
Can't take the square root of 2. It's just the square root of 2.
Ew, of course you take one.
Like you would leave it as square root of 2. Anyone else? Don't forget I'm recording. Anyone else?
This is confusing.
Tyler? Whose cookies were those?
I think they're knowledge.
Three cookies.
Do it.
I want.
No, I see a son either, not kids can't.
They're not.
She had
No, I
you
know
flex. She had you flex.
I just know that
Sitting
knowledge
there.
and Emma.
I just want to make sure because there's
All we do is
bugs sitting around like
Oh,
glue and all that. I just want to make sure that.
I thought you were talking about actual bugs.
Miss Holcombe.
No. All right. All right, guys. Look right here. You can probably guess what SSS stands for. Side, side, side. In the box. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. Alright, anyways, I used to have a thing that went right here. Here's what I want you to write is side, side, side.
Are we writing this in the?
You are writing it in pencil. I'll tell you, I will switch to highlighter when it needs to be in highlighter mode.
So, right here, what you're supposed to do is half of this.
The shortcut is copy the letter, the sign, and then it's b/2 squared.
I
That's
never,
the
he
shortcut.
never taught me that though.
I know, that's the shortcut.
But all he said was to take half of it and then multiply by 2.
No,
So
you're
would
not
this
supposed
just
to
be 2?
multiply by 2, you're supposed to square it. No, this
Or
would be
square it, so it's just 1.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it -1 or positive?
Can't be negative. It's never negative.
All
Alright. Here's an example of what it looks like. I need you to understand there's 2 types here. Y'all with me? There's 2 types. There's disconnected, and then there's when they're touching. And I've given you an example of each for all 5 shortcuts. When they are disconnected is the easiest type because it is exactly what is on the paper. There's no tricks, no secrets. Take your pencil and please mark accordingly, like what I have. Oh, y'all already marked it. Okay. When they are connected, here's where your highlighter is going to come in. When they are touching in some manner, you need to train your brain to think, okay, there's something not marked here that needs to be marked. Okay? And that would be this side, let me change colors. This side right here. I want you to highlight that side. And I want you to mark, draw an arrow to it, and write shared. So if I was to take those 2 triangles and separate them, that side would get repeated, wouldn't it? I'd end up drawing it twice. Imagine like pulling the 2 triangles apart. That side would have to be drawn twice. It's called a shared side. So if I was to have to do that, to draw them separately, this would get duplicated. Then is it safe to say that that side would have to be equal to itself because I just had to draw it twice? Yes. Okay, so that's a property in math that's called the reflexive property. I see it. It's called the reflexive property, okay? I want you to come underneath it and I want you to write reflexive. And then I want you to show me. You see how these sides are already congruent, and you might think, well, I can't say that those 2 triangles are congruent because I don't have a third side. Well, the third side is shared, which means if I drew them separate, it's congruent to itself. So you can come in here and mark it like a single congruence, and it's because it's shared. Not today, but on Monday, we're going to get to where I'm going to say to you what's the reason, and that's why you need to know the reflexive part. Is that good, Taylor?
Is it I square root
Oh,
negative
it's a
1?
0.25, so that's 1/4, so it would be the same as I to the 1 power. So that's I. There's no just I.
It said it was wrong.
Oh, it's gotta be a remainder of 3.
It was 9.25.
Just say we're fine.
It's 10.75. It has to be, honey, because 44 would be the next whole one. So it's a remainder of 3.
So then it's
So it's I cubed. And now you have to evaluate I cubed. I cubed is I squared times I, right?
Okay.
I squared is -1. So it's negative I.
okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. That's where y'all are going. All right.
Alright,
No.
Yeah, it is.
I'm dropping out.
No, you're not. Side is if you can state you have 3 congruent sides all the way around. Here's an example of where you can have a sneaky one, and you would mark that that side that's shared is congruent to itself because it would be duplicated should you draw them separately. Let's go to the next shortcut. This is, what do you think?
Side angle side.
Side angle side. Now, if they are disjoint, it would look like this. Here's an example. Here's what I want you to use with your highlighter. I want you to highlight the 2 sides that are congruent. And then I want you to take your pencil and draw an exaggerated arc on the angle that's congruent. And notice that the angle that's congruent is touching the 2 sides that you highlighted. That's how you know, okay, so if I was trying to prove these triangles are congruent, I have congruent sides, watch my fingers, congruent sides, congruent angles, congruent sides. The angles are touching both of the congruent sides, so therefore it's side angle side. Now, what would it look like if they were touching and there was a sneaky part to it? Here's an example. When you first look at it, you should state to yourself, okay, I've got congruent side here, congruent side here. Do I have anything else congruent that's not marked?
Yes.
What are they called?
Angle.
It starts with a V.
Vertical.
I want you to take your pencil and draw an arrow right here, and I want you to write vertical. And then I want you to mark that those angles are congruent. They are vertical to each other. And now looking at it, now you should be able to see your reasoning is here's a side, there's an angle, here's a side. Then you go to the other triangle to confirm in the same order. Here's a side, here's an angle, here's a side. See it? All right, what do you think the next shortcut stands for?
Angle side.
So it's the reverse of this. Angle, side, angle. So come right here, angle, side, angle. Okay, if the triangles are disjoint,
Do they
I was talking past tense, then yes. If they are disjoint, take your highlighter, highlight the congruent side. What do you notice about the congruent side in terms of the congruent angles?
No.
It's touching them. Look at the angles. See how this congruent angle here is touching the highlighted side, and so is that one? And then see how this congruent angle here is touching the highlighted side, and so is that one? Okay, so that lets you know that it's angle, side, angle. Because you have the congruent angle, immediately the congruent side, and immediately the congruent angle. Now, what if they're what if they're connected and there's something sneaky about it? Okay, so here's an example. When you first look at it, you might think there's not enough info here to say they're congruent. But what's not marked?
The angle, the vertical angles.
I want you to write this on your paper. I'm looking to see who is actually writing that instead of just trying to commit it to memory. Caleb, you gonna write anything? Okay, good. So this is congruent to this, and this is congruent to this. Now take your highlighter, highlight sides that are congruent to confirm that it's touching both of the angles that are congruent.
I thought there was no way to know if those if I can remember looking at it.
Those are two lines crossing, which means they're vertical, and all vertical angles are congruent. There's no way to know the measure of it, but because it's two lines crossing, you know for a fact they're vertical, which means they're congruent to each other. All right, the next one is angle, side.
Angle, side.
Yeah. So this one's a little different. If they're disconnected, I want you to go and highlight the side that's congruent, just the side. How many angles is the congruent side touching that are congruent? Sorry, just one, right? Which makes sense with the placement of the S. It's just next to 1A instead of in between both of them. You see the difference? Highlighting the side that's congruent really helps you to see in terms of the angles that are congruent. Like this is considered to be on the outside of those angles. This is considered to be in the middle. See the difference? All right, go to the next one. If they are touching, once again, you would have a sneaky pair of vertical angles here that are not marked, that should be, as congruent, and then highlight your one side that's congruent. And if I presented you that picture and said, are these triangles congruent? You would mark the vertical, then you would look at the picture and say to yourself, what do I have? I've got a pair of congruent angles here, congruent angles here, then a congruent side. So by the AAS, congruence postulate, I can prove that those triangles are equal. Okay? There is no in here. That's how you keep up with it. Right?
Oh, that's good.
We are not cussing. Rule number 3. We are not cussing. We are not saying it in reverse. We are not, like, there's in the, I think, British culture, it's an arse, right? They throw an R in there. There are are no arses in here, okay?
Hypotenuse.
Last one, hypotenuse leg.
It's one of the best words ever.
Hypotenuse leg. Okay, first of all, you gotta remember what a hypotenuse is. The hypotenuse is opposite, hypotenuse is opposite 90-degree angle. Always. Always, always, always. So you go to the triangle, you find the right angle, and you draw an arrow from the right angle to the side opposite of it, and that is your hypotenuse. Coming here, it would be this one, hypotenuse, right? Now, the hypotenuse leg shortcut, it only works, please highlight this, it only works in right triangles. So let's make a note right here. Only with right triangles. HL only works if it's a right triangle. Now, let me show you how HL works. How many sides are in the triangle? 3. Okay. And if you have a right triangle, you have one angle that measures. If you have a right triangle, you have one angle that measures 90. Okay, it's over there. Okay, in every right triangle, the hypotenuse is opposite of the right angle, and the other two sides, right? Go with me? The other two sides are called legs. The legs of a right triangle always form the right angle. I've lost some of y'all. I don't know why y'all are fascinated with her grabbing her charger. Look at me. In a right triangle, the sides that form the right angle are called the legs. Every time. Okay? So if you look at this shortcut, let me give you this, Audrey. Will you see Gracie?
Oh, I told her that it's down here. I think she wants to know.
Okay, well then never mind. In a right triangle, identify the hypotenuse first, because it is always opposite of the right angle. And then the two sides that are not labeled have to be the, what part? Legs. Okay, so, hold on, this is beating me. No, I've got it. It looks terrible. Alright, so if you look at it right here, here's an example of what it might look like if they were disconnected. You will notice that the hypotenuse is congruent, and then you have this one leg right here that's congruent. So, by default, you could, by the shortcut, you could say, oh, those two triangles have to be copies of each other. They have to be congruent. Here's what it looks like if they're connected. The only thing you're given is this side is congruent to this side, right? So you might think there's not enough info here. But they're touching, which means there's something not marked. What's not marked? There's a middle that is being shared. We can take my highlighter. You're going to highlight this. If I was to take those two triangles and separate them, that green highlighted side would be drawn twice, right? So it's congruent to itself. Let's make a note with your pencil. Shared. Now, there's a new reason why, and it's called symmetric. On Monday, we will dive deeper into those words, why one of them was reflexive and one of them is called symmetric. We will dive into that on Monday. For right now, just mark it. Looking at all 5 shortcuts, looking at your pictures, what do you notice is in every single one of them?
An angle. Or side.
Thank you. Let's ask it again because you answered so confidently. Looking at all 5 shortcuts, what do you notice is in every single one of them?
Side.
A pair of congruent sides. Notice there is always at least one pair of congruent sides.
It's not there, is there?
No, I'm identifying singular pair, so this is singular. There is one pair. I'm not saying there are congruent sides. I'm saying I'm calling it a pair. You see what I mean? The other takeaway, because there is at least one pair of congruent sides, there is no angle, or angle. There is no AA meetings or AAA roadside service here. Do y'all know what AAA is?
Yeah.
AAA is an insurance company. It's like a safety net, not insurance, but yeah.
AAA batteries.
Or AAA batteries, yeah. We don't have any batteries. How about that? There's no batteries here. Okay. We don't have any battery shortcuts. Go with me? Now, we did have an angle, similar triangle shortcut, but remember now we're not talking about similar, we're talking about congruent, and that's not enough. Okay? All right, let's practice. Go to the bottom. Go to the bottom. It says, determine if the pair of triangles are congruent. Determine if it's congruent. Well, how many shortcuts do we have?
There's 5.
All right, here we go. Look at the picture. If they're touching, mark what is not marked before you answer the question. So number 1, they're touching. What's supposed to be marked?
Vertical.
Okay, and I still want you to take your pencil, draw an arrow, and say vertical. I promise, it is going to train your brain with what's coming next, and it will help. Okay, and now you're going to take an assessment. If you need to take your highlighter, highlight the congruent side. Go and highlight the congruent side. All right. What do we have? Go around one triangle and then go around the other triangle. We've got a side here. Be careful. Then we have an angle. Then we have,
It's angle and ball.
notice the side is only touching one of the congruent angles, which means it's angle, side. Do you see the difference? Go back up at the top of your paper and look at the difference between ASA and AAS. This example is an AAS problem because the side that's congruent is only touching one pair of congruent angles. Okay? All right, number 2. What's not marked? This is vertical. And I can do a single congruent mark because that other one's already got 2, right? Now highlight your congruent side. What do you notice? There's not one. What did we just get done saying? What did Cade yell?
There's always
There's always a pair of congruent sides. We also said we're not dealing with batteries here. What is the only thing marked congruent in this picture? Angles, right? So do we have enough to say those are carbon copies, that they're congruent?
no.
No. So this would be not enough. There's not enough. You don't know. You don't know anything about the sides. Number 3. Can't go off of that. Number 3. What's not marked? There is a shared side right here, congruent to itself, right? So that's congruent to itself. I'm going to make a note, shared. All right, now take an assessment. You can go and you can highlight the other congruent sides. Notice the angle that's congruent. So what do we have? Focus on one triangle at a time.
Side.
I have a side,
Then
an angle, and then a side. Go to the other one and make sure it's in the same order. I've got a side, an angle, and a side. So yes. All right, number 4. What's not marked?
Shared.
This right here is shared. It would be congruent to itself. We'll make a note. Shared. Okay. You can go and you can highlight the other congruent sides if you want. What type of triangles do we have here?
Right.
We have a right triangle, so that means you could check to see if you have hypotenuse leg. Find the right angles, draw an arrow to the hypotenuse. Do you know that they are congruent?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Look, there's the hypotenuse here, and then there it is. So yes, it's hypotenuse leg. All right. Next section. The next section is the next level up in difficulty. They're saying, I want you to be able to show that these pictures are congruent by these shortcuts. I need you to tell me what is not marked that should be marked in order for you to do that. All right, so let's look at the first one. Just like we've been doing, if they are touching, there's something not marked that is by default, and it should be. Here, there is a shared side not marked. So this would be congruent to itself. You make a note, shared. Okay, now we're going to look and see. It says these two triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Based on the picture, what is it that's missing?
A side.
A side. Clearly we have the one pair here. We have the one shared pair here. We're missing the third side. And that would be, this needs to be congruent to this. And that's what they want you to say. They want you to say that KW would have to be congruent to VW in order for me to say side, side, side is the reason. Remember, congruent is a fancy math term for equal. They have to have the same length. All right, let's look at the next one. First of all, they're touching, so what's not marked that should be? You got vertical angles right here. Make a note. Okay, and they want us to use the shortcut AAS. Highlight the side, like we've been doing in all the other problems. Highlight the side that's congruent. So that takes care of the S part, right? Because it's already there. Y'all with me? Now, if we're traveling around the circuit, got to go in order. This would be a congruent side. This right here. Traveling around, this would be a congruent angle right next to it, right? So then what am I missing? Angle U, angle V. Yep. This is the one I'm missing. You see how it's you're marking or you're stating what is missing that should be marked in order for me to use that reason. All right, the next one, HL. Here's a congruent side not marked because it's being shared. All right, and they want us to use what shortcut? Okay, draw an arrow from the right angle to the hypotenuse. Are the hypotenuse in each triangle congruent yet? No, that's what's missing. If I draw my arrow, I know nothing about that. If I draw my arrow, I know nothing about that. So that means I have a leg, I don't have the hypotenuse. That's what I need. So now you gotta write it. Be careful, y'all. Order is gonna start mattering. If I call this QR, I came from like the short side down the hypotenuse. I've got to call this one XS. QR has got to be congruent to XS. All right, last example. What is not marked? You got vertical angles right here. Okay. So if you look at the picture, I definitely have a pair of vertical angles. Congruent angles. I've got two pairs. I'm missing the side. Does the placement of the side matter? Yeah. Absolutely. In the shortcut, it's in between the two angles. So go to your picture and highlight the side that would touch both angles. Yep. Yep. Now, if you call it V to J, the other one would have to be called
J to I.
Come from the
I to J, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. If you call it V to J, then you got to call it I to J. Now, we're going to mix this up a little bit. I'm going to give you the coloring assignment because you have the ability to finish it, and then the coloring you can do Monday. We'll do Monday as our warm-up. We'll color, like as a, hey, welcome back, congratulations to the big orange, and we'll color for our warm-up on Monday, but then we're going to move on. So I'm going to go ahead and give this to you. You could knock out probably half of it, because you're just looking at it and answering, do you have enough info, yes or no? If so, what's the shortcut? We will be doing the back of this worksheet, the one we just did. We'll be doing the back of it on Monday. All right, so look at your coloring sheet. Call this page 60. 60. Write your name on it. Look at number 1. It says identify the triangle congruence shortcut. If there's not enough information, you circle NEI, which means not enough information. All right, number 1, they are touching. That means something's not marked. It would be the vertical angles. Then you need to look at your side that's congruent and determine what would the shortcut be. Yes, because the side that's congruent is on the outside of the two angles. And that's it. That's all you're doing here. Okay? Huh? Well, if you do that, then circle the shortcut, then write the color. Now, be careful. So, highlight your side. Because if you highlight your side, notice it only touches one of them. It's not touching the outline. That means it's on the outside, so it's AAS.